Well, hi everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee. It is a Friday night, the 8th of March. It's also my younger brother's birthday today, so happy birthday to my brother Phil, and many more to come. It is 7:30 as we are headed into a weekend. We've got a storm that's headed for the Great Lakes. We have a weak system here in the east at the moment that is moving by south of New York City and Philadelphia and moving its way out. There was a little bit of snow in the Washington, D.C. area, a little bit in Baltimore, hardly enough to even whiten the ground in spots because temperatures were in the middle to upper 30s when the snow was coming down, and it was very, very light anyway. That system was minor. Now we transition over to what will be something a bit more important for the areas in the northern plains and extending into the let's call it the western part of the upper Midwest, western Wisconsin, on up the Minnesota shores of Lake Superior, for example. Sometimes you get these borderline events that you have to try to figure out a clever way of saying, just exactly who is going to be impacted. Let me just do some business very fast right off the top. For those of you who shop on Amazon, you can easily support my channel by just very simply using the link that is provided on the descriptor to this live stream. And while you don't have to purchase anything that's on this page, if you search and shop from here, you get your stuff. Amazon throws me back a little bit of coin to get a few cigars, and it doesn't cost you an extra dime. And everybody's happy. So it's amazon.com/shop/meteorologist Joe Chaffee. And for those of you who are interested in perhaps expanding your weather experience, consider my weather platform on Patreon. We have 258 members and growing. You get extra live streams. You can message me at any time. Lots of extra posts, stuff that's not on my website or my websites or on social media. And it's just $2 a month, and I will put the link to that in the chat board. And in the meantime, you can also find it on the descriptors. You can find both links on the descriptor to this live stream and the descriptor to this video. So let's get right to it. I want to start off with the temperature map tonight. The National Weather Service, the NWS EDD, the Enhanced Digital Display. It seems every time I wanted to use it this week, it would be down right around showtime. Well, I got lucky tonight, and the numbers are up. So these are 7 o'clock temperatures, and I'm bringing them up. I want to show first my neck of the woods, which has been really encased in unusually cold March weather. And for the first time today, we went above freezing since back on Monday. That's for this time of year. That's an awfully tough accomplishment. You really have to be in the depths of a rather cold pattern in order to pull that off. And we even had a couple of days where it didn't get out of the 20s, and one day it didn't even get out of the mid-20s in my neck of the woods, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. And, for example, I know one of my regulars, Chuck, who lives up in the Catskills, had his third consecutive day of below zero low temperatures. And he says in all the years that he's lived up where he is in the Catskills, I believe is more in the southern part of the Catskills, that this is the first time he's ever seen anything like that. So these recent years have produced some rather cold weather in March, and at least for the start of the month, that continues. But again, recovery today. We did manage to get up above freezing, and right now, as of 7:30, it's in the middle 30s as you go from New York City on south, even lower 30s in and around Washington, D.C., Baltimore, where it's 32, 34. And then you go up to the north. There's a little bit of colder air to the north, so you start to drop down into the 20s and even the teens. The other area where I want to look at the temperatures, because this is going to play a part in the threat for severe weather on Saturday. We're starting to see, as soon as it populates, if it will populate, but we are beginning to see warmer temperatures spreading all across the South, and it's playing into, it's playing into a severe weather risk area for today, which is across Texas and then we're going to see that area expand up into the lower and middle Mississippi Valley on Saturday. But you can already see the table being set with temperatures in the 60s and 70s pushing northward up into northern Mississippi. And there is a cold boundary, because if you look at Little Rock is at 52, you go a handful of miles to the south and it's in the low 70s. You go a handful of miles further north and it's in the low 40s. So you're getting that temperature gradient setting up across the middle Mississippi Valley, the warm front that's going to eventually push on northward, and that is going to, I think, create an important severe weather outbreak for Saturday. And in fact, here's the Storm Prediction Center's risk area for tonight, which is the slight risk of severe in northeastern Texas, much of eastern Oklahoma, western Arkansas, and that marginal risk running up to about where the frontal boundary is in northern Arkansas. And then as we move into Saturday, this is where we mentioned the last couple of days this would not be a shocker, and indeed the Storm Prediction Center has added an area of enhanced risk for northeastern Arkansas, western Tennessee, northwest Mississippi, southeastern Missouri, and a small portion of southern Illinois, encased inside a larger area of slight risk. Looks like they might have shrunk the slight risk area down a little bit. And now, of course, where yesterday they didn't have the enhanced risk, but I believe they had the slight risk out to the borderline of where the marginal risk is. So they took that in a bit and added that area of enhanced risk. So we're working toward the second weekend in a row where there could be a serious outbreak of severe weather in some areas. Here's the latest surface map, and the frontal boundary runs right across the south through South Carolina. You've got 40s on one side and near 70 or even into the low 70s in southern Georgia on the other. And that frontal boundary kind of snakes across back through northern Mississippi, cuts through the state of Arkansas, then takes a bit of a dip down in North Texas before it rises back up. And this is where you start to see the system that's organizing to take a deep low to the Great Lakes. In the Northeast, this weak system, there's a weak low somewhere in here, probably just east of the Carolina coast now, that's going to just push out straight to the east. There's no development here. And the air that's over the east is not particularly cold. We had temperatures actually go above freezing into much of central Michigan, even back up into parts of Wisconsin, seeing some readings up in the lower 30s. So this is not a particularly cold air mass, but it is going to settle in and keep marginal cold air in place for tomorrow with the arrival of precipitation tomorrow night. At least that's going to be the case for some inland areas. I don't think that's going to be an issue as far as the coast is concerned. The radar loop, and this is as of 7:38. So if you're watching this later, remember with regards to severe weather, if you're watching this on a replay, please check your local National Weather Service office with regards to severe weather threats, and you can find that by going to weather.gov. But here's the radar in the east, the light snow that is up over northeastern Virginia, Maryland. It's not really all that impressive. There was a little precip on the radar even into southern New Jersey. Some places the precip is reaching the ground, other places it's not, and it's moving out to the east. We've got some steadier rain, though, further south near the frontal boundary, excuse me, over North Carolina and northern South Carolina, back through eastern Tennessee, and that's moving to the east. In the severe weather threat area for tonight, we're not seeing much development yet, but that may come later on, back through Texas and in through Oklahoma. It may be more of an overnight affair than anything else, and back up into Arkansas. And then further west into the colder air, you start to get into some of the snows that are going on back through the Rockies, in back through Utah and Nevada, and on up into Idaho. All of this part of the area of snow that's going to bring some rather snowy conditions to the northern plains. The snow forecast from the Weather Service pretty much makes a lot of sense here. Area of about 10 inches or more in eastern South Dakota and western Minnesota. It's quite possible that we may just fall short of blizzard warning criteria in these areas. The Weather Service's office has said that at times there could be blizzard-like conditions, but in terms of meeting that blizzard criteria over a long enough period of time might not be there. But a technicality nonetheless, in that the snowfall amounts are generally going to be in the 6 to 10 inch range in most of the areas across the Dakotas, Minnesota, and into northern Wisconsin and into the upper peninsula of Michigan, while you've got that one cluster there where you could wind up with some amounts approaching 1 foot. Back into the Rockies, we're seeing some heavy snows being indicated there in the Wasatch in Utah, and still some snows going on in the Sierra Nevadas where we don't have winter storm warnings up now. At least last I looked, we didn't. We have the winter weather advisories, and let me run through what is up warnings wise, and then we'll come back to the weather maps in a bit. We'll go to the weather models in just a second, but here is tonight's watches and warnings. A little leftover winter weather advisory in northwestern Virginia and easternmost West Virginia, but you've got that bigger area of winter storm warnings in Minnesota. It looks like the whole state, except for the extreme southeast, where a winter storm watch is still up for that area. I guess that's going to really hinge on the track of the surface low. And we've got watches, warnings into western Wisconsin, watches just east of there, and advisories out to the lake shore. Winter weather advisories in the purple surrounding that area. Excuse me, folks. This time of year, you start to get into the nasal stuff, and I seem to be at that point right now. Winter weather advisories surrounding those winter storm warnings in the Central Plains and also back up through the Rockies. And you've got a scattering of winter storm warnings in Colorado. By the way, that little blue spot you see there, that's an avalanche warning. There have been over 300 reported avalanches in western Colorado based on a couple of news stories that I read about it today. So that condition is continuing. And then you see out in California, winter weather advisories in the Sierra Nevadas. You've got some wind issues also with some wind advisories and high wind watches and warnings up in some areas across New Mexico, eastern Arizona, small portion of West Texas, including El Paso, and in a band across Kansas through Missouri and into Illinois, parts of Kentucky as well. And some high wind watches are up for the lake shores of Erie and Ontario on the New York State side. Rainfall amounts are been telegraphed by WPC. We saw what SPC, which is the Storm Prediction Center, said about the severe weather. So let's look at WPC. And again, we're looking at some very big rainfall amounts. So this is through next Friday night. So we do have another weather system coming later in the week. But the rainfall amounts this week are going to be substantial in northern Mississippi, northwest Alabama, and to Tennessee, according to WPC, on the order of 5 to 7 inches in that area. But in general, through the Mississippi Valley, the plains, and extending into parts of the Ohio Valley, many areas are going to see 2 to 4 inches of rain or more. Not so much as you start to move your way down from coastal North Carolina southward into Florida. You can see that the rainfall amounts over the next 7 days, not really all that much, particularly in Florida. It looks like it's generally 1/4 inch or less there. The West Coast is calming down to some degree, some 1 and 2 inch amounts up in Northern California and extending up the coast. Much of that's going to be, well, I shouldn't say it's front-end loaded because there is a system for later on, but these systems that are coming in now into the West are not quite as formidable as what we have been seeing on and off over the last several weeks. But that is also telegraphing, perhaps down the road, a bit of a pattern shift, which we're going to get into when we discuss the long range. So here's our U.S. satellite loop tonight. and you see that first system in the east beginning to pull away. You also can see the tropical feed of moisture from the Pacific running across Baja and into New Mexico and Texas. So that's all part of the process that's going to be driving that severe weather threat and setting up the winter storm for the northern plains as that moisture gets involved with the developing low. And on the far left, you see the energy that is coming into the Rockies now that's going to be pushing eastward and getting all of this put together. Sorry, just had to take a swig of water there. Okay, so let's bring the weather models back up and see where we're going with all this. And we'll take it here. First off, we'll start with the wide GFS tonight. And by the way, starting Sunday, of course, is the beginning of daylight saving time, which means that all the models are going to come out an hour later than usual. So the GFS, instead of starting at 4:30, will start at 5:30. So we should have it for all done by the 7 o'clock live streams. It doesn't really impact us that much on this particular show, but it does impact the Joe and Joe Weather Show because we like to live stream the NAM, and that usually starts coming out at 8:45. Well, now it's only not going to start coming out until 9:45. Either way, here we go. First low moves out in the east, but let's focus on the low in Colorado that starts to intensify, moves through Kansas, and then up into eastern Iowa, and eventually finds its way into Lake Michigan, north of Chicago, as a 990-ish low. The trailing front is running down from about St. Louis down to just east of Little Rock and into just west of Houston. So you'll get that severe weather set up tomorrow. I wonder, because the GFS was so aggressive days ago with deepening this low into the 970s, it barely gets it down into the 990-ish range. I wonder that the dynamics are a little flatter, whether that might reduce the area of severe weather for tomorrow. Last week we saw that widespread tornado breakout, but I want to be really careful here because enhanced risk is enhanced risk, and when it comes to severe weather, it's the sort of thing that you should be darn happy if it doesn't happen. Okay, so I don't want to leave the wrong impression that there isn't, that there would be a less of a play tomorrow. I think it's serious enough for the Storm Prediction Center to do a enhanced severe weather risk. I defer to them. In the meantime, you've got another system coming into California and just kind of straddling the coast. You can see it's a lot weaker than some of the other systems that have played in. Now, as far as the weather in the east is concerned, that high for tomorrow is going to create a pretty nice day from New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania, north and east through New England. It's cold air, but it's not all that cold, but cold enough that when this precip comes in, as this cold front just basically sweeps around like a giant arm, when that precip arrives, there might be a little snow and sleet at the start. There might be a bit more than just a little bit when you move up into upstate New York and in through parts of New England. That's because there, of course, the temperatures are going to be a critical few degrees colder for a longer period of time. But this is just basically an 8-hour period of precipitation, 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. in the New York City area, roughly, a little sooner as you go to the west for the start time and a sooner end time, and a little later as you go to the east. But it's quick and to the point, and up it goes on up into New England. And, of course, Maine winds up doing fairly well with this, as you would expect. And then the low heads up into southern Canada. We don't have as much cold air behind this low as we did with prior lows. So we're not going to go back to what we had. What we are going to see probably is seasonal temperatures setting up in the east for the first 3 days of next week. And we're going to have 3 days where we're going to have at least some sunshine each day. So Monday might be the one day where there may be more clouds around from cold air and instability. But Tuesday and Wednesday, we should see a ton of sunshine. And of course, now, as we get into later Tuesday and Wednesday, you start to see rain from Texas all the way up into Iowa and Nebraska. There's literally no cold air left. It's exhausted itself, except for the Northeast, except for New England, where it's going to be chilly, and down to the northern mid-Atlantic states, where it will be seasonal on Tuesday. There's no cold air left as you go west through the Great Lakes and Plains. You have to go out to the West Coast where you start to see snows, Washington, Oregon, and Northern California, because that's where the trough is. Very deep trough, very, very far to the west, very strong ridge building into the east. So through next week, the emphasis will be more rain than snow. And in fact, look at this. You've got rain going all the way up into Minnesota to north of International Falls. The models have been doing this for the last couple of days, and they remain pretty consistent. Also, notice, because of the depth of the trough in the west, you've got snow showing up in western New Mexico and down into the mountains of Mexico itself. So that cold air drives pretty far south from that western trough, and the warm air surges pretty far north from the eastern ridge. And the GFS actually wraps up a very large area of heavy rain breaking out for the middle of next week from Kansas, from Oklahoma, central Kansas, on up through Nebraska and Iowa. And I think that's reflected by the Storm Prediction Center's forecast. And there's your low, a 981 low in western Iowa. So it's not until you get toward Thursday, you start to get colder air coming back into the picture, into the northern plains, with a high coming down from Canada. So you're getting some cold air, and the trough is beginning to shift eastward. So then you start to see an expanding area of snow with this low late next week. And meanwhile, in the east, we're fine until through Wednesday. The flow is, where the high is. They should keep things pretty nice. I think Wednesday's going to be a great day overall, with the high sitting right overhead over New Jersey. For my area, Wednesday I think will probably be the best day of the whole week, with lots of sunshine and temperatures getting into the into the 50s. And then as that low tracking as far west as it is, as the front pushes eastward, it's going to lose much of the shower activity with it, and there may or may not be a second wave that develops on this. That's the only question I have with regards to it. And then it turns colder after that. I'm going to stop for a moment here. I want to just go back to the snow forecast map with regards to Saturday night into Sunday morning, as far as what the Weather Service offices here are forecasting. They've got that coating to an inch line to just north of New York City and into northern New Jersey. I think that's kind of pushing it, but let's say if we give it the benefit of the doubt and say that it does happen, it's going to change over to rain and wash it away very fast anyhow. So I don't think it really has any consequence. But you do start to get into some 2, 3, 4, 5, even 5-inch amounts as you go up into the Catskills and on up into parts of upstate New York, and then as you head east into northeastern New York and through Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine, you begin to pick up several inches, maybe some amounts pushing up to 5 or 6, but that would be the limit. The snow area that you see, by the way, in southern Pennsylvania and into Maryland and western Virginia is the system from today. When you look at the maps here on the Weather Service's digital forecast data display site, the snowfall forecast maps are cumulative, so you see you can set it by the day. So if I wanted to see just the first event, I could just put the clock back to say Saturday afternoon. But that's already happened. but it's in the total when you run it all the way to the last day of the period, and I have it set for right through the period ending Monday at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. So this is the outcome of what's going to happen for Saturday night into Sunday morning. Skiers are going to love this because they get at least a little bit of additional snow to play with when it's all said and done. So let me switch to, I'm going to put the upper air, and then we're going to come back to, I'm going to switch to the teleconnections. And I wrote about this afternoon on Patreon. It's also on my website. And I did send the link via a YouTube post that you should have gotten as you're part of the YouTube community. So if you want to do a little background reading on this afterward, by all means, go right ahead. But we've been talking about the fact that there could possibly be one more window of, let's call it a window of opportunity for snow lovers in the coastal Northeast. It is a long shot. I want to make it clear that even though the pattern may be in a broad sense, I think the pattern is going to become more favorable. And it might be at its most favorable point for the whole winter, for that matter. But it's only going to be, I think, a short-lived weather pattern that lasts about a week to 10 days. And that will then change back into, well, pretty much what we've been seeing, with the Pacific jet dominating things. And that will probably mean for some early spring warmth maybe coming. I don't know. We'll see. But until we get there, we have to get through this. And what is happening on the teleconnections is that the Pacific North America Index, which if you remember over the last several weeks has been running deeply negative and at times off the wall negative. In those stretches, we've had those massive deep troughs in the west, the snow in Seattle is one outcome. The fact that Los Angeles has had one of its coldest Februarys. I think might have been their coldest February ever. It's not the coldest. It was certainly one of the coldest. And for the first time, the temperature on any day did not reach the 70-degree mark. The Pacific North America Index is now going to flip into the exact opposite pattern. And for the second day in a row, it is showing, and in the not-too-distant long range, by the way, we're only talking 10 days from now when it hits its peak, but it does go to an off-the-wall positive reading here. And that is significant because that is telling us that the trough that's in the west is now going to be the big ridge in the west. And you're also going to have a troughing in the east that's going to be developing. All of this is being driven, by the way. In fact, I will let me bring the graphic up that I drew. I should have pulled this up sooner, but this will really at least give you a visual idea of what the upper air is going to look like. And it's in that primer piece on my website, and it's called Winter's One Last Window of Opportunity. So here's the map of the upper air. Let me scroll down to it. So this is what it's going to look like this is a week next Saturday night, according to how the models see it. The driving force is that deep trough that develops at 160 degrees west, or right at about the longitude of Hawaii. You have a deep trough that runs from the Aleutians, south of the Aleutians, all the way south, and it dominates the weather in all of the Gulf of Alaska. And there's going to be a 960-ish surface low with all of this. That is going to force a ridge to build up the west coast and into western Canada. And then the other side of that is that you're going to have lower pressures and a vortex of some sort forming in eastern Canada, which will drive the trough in the east. So this is what, when your PNA, when your Pacific North America Index is positive, and in our case it may be strongly positive, this is what the upper air looks like. The ridge in the west, troughing in the east, deep trough out at 160 degrees west down to Hawaii. It's probably that deep trough that is driving the strong positive reading. So we want to be really careful to not read too much into that strong positive P&A index, because if it's being driven by the excessively deep trough that's out there at 160, it may lead to a different kind of outcome in the east. None of this guarantees that there's going to be any kind of snow event, nor is there anything there that you can point to specifically, certainly at this stage of the game, and say, this is it, this is going to be the one. But at least the road map is there if something were to fall into the right place, if the timing was correct, if you have just enough cold air, then you may be able to pull it off. But all your ducks are going to have to be in a row, and the odds of that happening, even in an overall broad-scale favorable pattern, is going to be a tough cookie to pull off. Just bear that in mind. I just offer this as, as at least for about a week or so, you're going to have a pattern where if something were going to happen, this is the pattern you want, the best you're going to get, and you have to work with the tools of what you have. And then after that, it's probably likely that the pattern will just revert back. One of the things that is missing, which would be nice to have, is the fact that the North Atlantic Oscillation, or the NAO, which is the pressure patterns in the North Atlantic, when they're negative, we've got a blocking pattern which drives a trough into the eastern part of the United States. It's positive here, which means everything is pretty much going to be moving along from west to east. There's nothing that's going to be able to hold systems back. The other part of this equation, of course, which I think is more important, is the East Pacific Oscillation, or the EPO, which through this whole cold stretch we just had has been strongly negative. Well, it's not strongly negative, it's somewhat negative, and it's forecast to go negative in about 4 or 5 days. But it does go negative, and on this particular run of the GFS last night, it's flashing a stronger negative reading than what it has been flashing over the prior couple of days. So we're going to watch that closely to see if that EPO, that EPO index goes stronger in the negative in the negative way over the next couple of days, and that might add a little bit more support for something to happen. So for you snow lovers, that's what you've got really to hinge on. So let's watch the upper air pattern evolve from what it is. We are at a negative Pacific North America index, so you can see the difference in the upper air from this, where you've got a strong ridge in the west and that trough at 160, to this, where you have the trough in the west and no trough near 160. You basically have a flat ridge here with a strong westerly jet running just to the north of that across the Pacific, and then driving its way down toward California. So there's your difference here. Negative PNA here, positive PNA on this one, PNA Pacific North America Index. So that's what we're starting with. And that trough in the west, by the way, gets only deeper as we go through the weekend and into next week. You see that upper low that drops down into Baja California. You're starting at this point, you're going to be beginning to plant the seeds for the change in the Gulf of Alaska. If you take a look at this short wave that is swinging through the Aleutians here, it starts near the top of the screen where you see that number 513. Okay, so there's an upper low there. So that drives south of the Aleutians and then starts to wrap up and around, and you start to get all this energy piling down near 160 west. So you're getting that deep trough near Hawaii. Meanwhile, looking at the eastern part of the United States, you can watch it again, what happens in the east. So let's back away here. So here we are for Saturday, tomorrow, ridge in the east. You've got your system that's swinging up through the Great Lakes and then swings across southeastern Canada. And once that happens, Remember, there's no NAO here. The North Atlantic Oscillation is positive, so all these troughs are moving in, moving out. So as soon as that pulls out, big ridge builds here in the east, that deep trough in the west, and energy beginning to rotate around it to bring up that rainstorm that goes all the way up into Minnesota. That ridge in the east holds for an extra day. It takes a little while for it to break down, but it does break down. And now you're starting to see that deep trough getting down into 160. And here at day 9, you have it's very deep, extending down to Hawaii. And of course, the ridge now in the west is pretty strong, going up into western Canada. And you've got some shortwave troughs that are swinging around the Great Lakes and into the east. And you can see that there. That lifts out, and then there's one more, perhaps, as we're now at March 24th. So I think that's about the limit of the pattern, I believe, because then you're going to start to, you can see what happens here. You get this upper low that drives down near Hawaii, at the longitude of Hawaii, I should say. But because of that NAO being the way it is, everything's going to be moving. So eventually, you're going to get rid of it, and it's going to move further to the east. And then suddenly, when we get toward the end of the period, what's happening? Well, you're starting to see that jet getting back into the Pacific and the ridge in the west breaking down. You've got 2 leftover systems here in the east to get through, but once those go lift up and out with no block, the ridge is going to come up. So I think that's where we're going. You're going to have that window of opportunity. Whether it gets taken advantage of by the atmosphere and putting shortwaves in an advantageous place, I don't know. I have to tell you, in my mind, I'm thinking it's probably going to wind up being a wasted opportunity. I don't think that there's much room here for anything to happen. On the other hand, I would just say that what just happened late last week, I don't think was well telegraphed by models the week before. So we are certainly going to see probably some changes in the long range in terms of what the surface is going to look like. It's pointless to really look at it because it's so deep into the long range that every time we look at it, it's going to show something different, and it's going to have absolutely no meaning from a forecast standpoint because it's not anything you're going to be able to hang your hat on. But the bottom line is that you'll have that short period, and then perhaps right after that, we can do things like get the yards cleaned up, go out to the golf course, do some outdoor things, get rid of all the snow cover. I can't believe I'm saying that, considering the winter we've had. It's been so odd being outside, looking at all the snow cover that's been around. That's kind of where my head's at through all of this. Awesome Gaming, thank you so much for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Scott Briller, 1 year ago today, the second of 4 nor'easters wrapping up Montvale, New Jersey, got 27 inches of snow, and Plymouth Meeting outside of Philadelphia, 4.5 inches of snow in 90 minutes, and there was no snow angle required. Absolutely correct. And the third and fourth nor'easters, the fourth nor'easter was the one that gave me 19 inches of snow, and it snowed 5 inches an hour in central Long Island for about 2.5 hours. That was something to see, and unfortunately I was working that night, so I was not able to see it, nor was I able to get there. Doug Crum, the fat lady has laryngitis, but she's still there on the stage. She's just waiting for her cue. Her cue is going to come right after spring arrives officially. A couple of days after that, I think she'll be singing her aria at that point. David and Chloe, I wonder what the snowfall record is for the latest major winter storm in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. What date was it, and how much snow accumulated? I got to go back and look to see if the April 9th storm of 1982, yeah, because I just went to Corpus Christi. I missed it by 2 weeks. I had just started my first on-air TV job in Corpus Christi, Texas, and I remember saying before I left to I believe it was Joe Rayo. I may have said this to watch that now that I'm leaving 2 weeks from now, we'll have a blizzard in April. There were no long range models at the time to make a conclusion like that. When was the last time, Richard Mecklow? The last time we had a week without precipitation? God, you know what? I don't know. I couldn't even begin to tell you. Gosh, that's a good question. I got to go back and look when that was, because my memory is like mush now. It's hard for me to remember these events. It's hard for me to even remember what happened weather-wise here back on Monday, let alone earlier, sometime in the last year. But I will say that it does seem to be quite a while. I'm wondering whether we did have a stretch during the early fall when that was the case, maybe back in September. But I'm not sure. I'm going to go check that. Timothy Veltman, I used to like daylight saving time, but now it's starting to seem pointless. It's like cutting a foot off the top of your blanket, sewing it to the bottom, and calling it a longer blanket. Exactly. In this day and age, it makes no sense. In China, they have one time zone. Okay, the whole country is under one time zone, and it's China's not a small country. It stretches out pretty far east-west, and would have a handful of time zones normally, but they have one time zone for the whole country. You just get, it would just take a short period of time, relatively speaking. It'll probably take a little while, maybe 5 or 10 years for the vast majority of people to just get used to the idea. But my understanding is that it is due to, it's actually the retail industry apparently lobbies very strongly against getting rid of daylight saving time. Honestly, I think a compromise, if they go back to when years ago, it would be it went from the last weekend in April to the last weekend in October, okay? Then they changed it, so now they've gotten to where it's the second week of March and back to the first week of November. I wish we would just go back to a shorter, if you're not going to get rid of it, may just make it shorter. No, David Schwartz, not year-round. I want to go back to standard time. Because the maps come out on Greenwich time, and that means that I don't have to wait till 3 o'clock in the morning to see the entire run of the European as opposed to 2 o'clock in the morning. Not to say that I've done either one. I have stayed up for maybe just the very beginning of the European run when something's in the short range. David Schlotthauer. David Schlotthauer. Thank you so much for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really, really appreciate it. Yeah, standard time all year round. Time zones were invented, by the way, to help railroads back in the 1800s so that they could have a set standard time for arrivals and departures all around the country. And that's the origin of the time zones. They've really sort of outlived their usefulness. I think we should just go to Greenwich. The whole world should just go to Greenwich time. It's one standard time all around. It's midnight everywhere at the same time, and whatever it is, it is. If it's morning, if it's afternoon, if it's the middle of the night, we'd be 5 hours behind. So 7 o'clock in the evening would effectively, when it's midnight in Greenwich, it's 7 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock right now, but it'll be the new midnight. You would just get used to it. It's that simple. Central Park has only had 4 foot or more snowstorms since 1869. The last one 1960. So if you're a snow lover, we're long overdue. Scott, I'm not sure what you're referencing. I'm thinking has only had 4 foot or more snowstorms since 1869. Is that in the month of March? Because that can't be for the whole winter, obviously. So is it for what time frame is that? Because I just want to be clear. Growing up with Daphne, 1 to 2 inches for you. So I'm assuming you're up somewhere up to the north in upstate New York. Just get back through. Not fan of temps over 85. David and Chloe, my body sweats too much from medication. I'd rather deal with colder weather. I have to tell you, the 85 doesn't bother me so much, but when it's humid at 85, that bothers me. I just hope that we don't have another summer and fall like we did with that god-awful humidity from last year, which was just unbearable at times. There were some days that the air just literally didn't move. That I have a particular tough time with, and I just hope we don't have a repeat performance with that. Lorenzo Rodriguez, are you going to get severe weather in North Texas? It is indicated by the Storm Prediction Center for later tonight, so just bear that in mind. There was nothing on the radar as of right now, 8:15, but make sure you check your local National Weather Service radar over the next 5 or 6 hours, because I'm sure you're going to start to see some stuff bubbling up. Yes, Amy Hogan, Maine is trying to switch to the Atlantic time zone, and Florida, by the way, wants to go to daylight. Has already passed it. They're waiting for Congress to move on it, because apparently Congress has some say on this. But Florida has set it up where they go to daylight saving time now. They're never going to come off of it. They're going to stay on daylight saving time year round. So that's going to be very interesting, since the western part of the state is technically in a different time zone. So that might work out to where, come the winter time in that part of the state, the sun may rise at 9 o'clock in the morning. You can have kids going to school in full darkness. That was a problem. I remember when they first extended daylight saving time back in the 70s in response to the energy crisis, and then they had to push it back because there was a lot of people were upset in that their kids were going to school. I can remember being at dark, because sunrise at the late sunrises in January in New York City. I think the latest sunrise is about 7:22 a.m. And now you push it back another hour, so now it's at 8:22 a.m. So you go to school, and it's completely dark. I mean, I didn't have a particular problem with it, but parents did, and they wound up changing that because it was a big issue. So it's not something that they're going to work out anytime soon. You're asking for politicians to agree, and if they're for it, then they're against it until the other side is against it, and then they're for it. So it's one of the things, I guess, as human beings that we have to deal with. And early next week, even next week, early high school kids will be going out in the almost dark. I hear you. I know in Louisiana, in southern Louisiana, where I live there, a lot of the high schools started at 7 o'clock in the morning. Was the start time for school, and the kids went to school. It was still dark out. What are you going to do? All right, we'll leave it at that for tonight. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate it. It's been another fun week here on my YouTube channel, and the fact that you're here day to day is a big deal to me. Thank you so much. It's helped us grow. We have now 8,300 subscribers and getting close to that magic 10,000 mark, which I'm hoping to get to later this year. We'll see. In the meantime, as far as the weekend is concerned, it's always a toss-up for me on the weekends about doing live streams and the timing of those live streams. So I can't really give you a set time. This way it gives me a little bit of downtime that I can use. So if I wind up doing a live stream, you'll see it pop up on the schedule and you'll get a notification. I just can't give you anything definitive at this point. Patreon members, you'll probably get your live stream over the weekend at some point. We've been doing them later on. We've been doing them in the evening before the YouTube live stream. I might just do it in the middle of the day tomorrow. Again, it'll depend on how my schedule plays out for Saturday and Sunday. We'll have a Joe and Joe weather show coming up in about an hour on my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Chaffee, so you can join us there if you'd like. It'll be our last Joe and Joe show in standard time. And be sure to check out my my free weather app, which is available on Google Play and on the App Store. Just search Meteorologist Joe Chaffee and have at it. And we just want to say, with respect to that Amazon link, as a disclosure, just to let you know that we are a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated sites. Thanks again. Have a great weekend. We will see you at some point. If not over the weekend, we'll see you back on Monday.